Janelle, and Christine. And I have 12 wonderful. My family's on the verge of a huge change. That lifestyle, in fact, it recommends it, and like to reward good behavior. So if you're good with one marriage, they figure you'll be good with two. A big kiss for me? Where's my big kiss? Oh, you've been playing all. And how's it going?
Very good.
How was your day?
Very good.
my day was really quite nice.
Good.
So,
Once upon a time, before the headlines, before the breakups, before the bitterness, there was a family, a real family, a husband, 4 wives, a dozen children, and a dream so big it didn't just challenge the rules of love, it redefined them. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but in those early days, it was theirs. And if you watched back then, you remember the laughter echoing through cluttered living rooms, the smell of dinners cooked for 20, the kids running barefoot across the lawn chasing each other while the adults tried to figure out how to make a plural marriage work in a world built for couples. This is their story, not as the world sees it now, but as it began, the sister-wives story before the cracks, before the betrayals, when love still felt possible. Back then, it wasn't about TV ratings, it was about belief in a principle. In a way of living that most people couldn't understand and maybe didn't want to. Cody was the dreamer, the one with the golden smile and the boundless energy, talking about how love could grow if you let it. Mary was the first chapter of that dream, his high school sweetheart, the one who stood by him before the world even knew his name. Janelle came next, practical and steady, grounding the whirlwind. Then Christine, the heart, the warmth, the one who brought laughter into every room. And then Robin, the newcomer, the change that no one saw coming, not then at least. In those first episodes, you could almost feel the hope radiating off the screen, the way they spoke about each other carefully, lovingly, like handling something fragile but precious. They'd gather for family nights, crammed into living rooms where kids sat on the floor and couches overflowed. There were awkward moments, sure, little frictions over time, money, and space, but in those moments, you believed they'd figure it out. Remember those drives, Cody bouncing between houses, grinning, teasing, trying to keep everyone happy, the wives cooking in their kitchens, their voices drifting in and out as the camera caught stolen smiles and side glances. It was messy, it was chaotic, it was beautiful. If you want to remember what really made this family feel alive, just watch the kids, the way Logan looked out for his younger siblings, the way Aspen helped in the kitchen without being asked. The way Truly's giggles could cut through any tension in the room. The children didn't care about contracts or camera crews, they cared about each other, about birthday cakes baked at midnight, about piling into the car for road trips, singing along to songs no one really knew all the words to. They were the glue, the living proof that somehow, in all its complexity, this family worked. Cody talked about the big picture like it was gospel, one big house, one big kitchen, one family. They dreamed of a place where no one had to feel like a visitor in their own marriage, where the kids could run from one mom's house to another without even knocking, where the wives could share not just a husband, but a life. And in those early years, it didn't feel impossible, it felt close. You could see it in the way they celebrated holidays, in the way Mary and Janelle laughed over old stories, in the way Christine would help Robin with her kids even though they barely knew each other. It was a balancing act, but for a while, the balance held. There was a kind of rhythm to their lives back then, a constant hum of movement and laughter, the sound of doors opening and closing as Cody made his way between homes, the shared meals. That felt like events because so many people were gathered around the same table, the quiet moments where one wife would help another without a second thought, and even the kids seemed to know they were part of something rare. The holidays were the clearest example, Christmas trees in multiple living rooms, presents spilling out across floors, Cody moving between houses with the same red and green tie, trying to make every child feel like they were the center of his attention. Birthdays meant handmade cakes and decorations, family members singing just a little off-key but with so much heart that it didn't matter. It was during those celebrations that you could see the genuine affection, the shared belief that despite their differences, they were building something worth protecting. They took road trips in caravans of minivans, stopping at gas stations where kids poured out like a small army, filling the air with chatter and laughter. In the evenings, they'd gather to tell stories, to play games, to watch the kids put on little shows in the living room. Back then, Christine's laugh could light up a whole house, Janelle's calm voice could smooth over brewing tension, Mary's sharp wit could turn an awkward moment into a joke, and Robin's soft tone was still something new that blended into the family's existing melody. There was something pure about those early days, like they all understood that the rest of the world might not accept them, but inside their circle, they were safe. Even when challenges arose, they seemed smaller, easier to handle, because there was still a belief that they could overcome anything together. Cody would talk about building a future where their kids would grow up knowing they were loved by many parents, where every child had more than one home, more than one mother's embrace. The wives spoke about lifting each other up, about sharing not just responsibilities, but joy, about the deep trust it took to live this way. And there were little details that stick in your mind, like the way the kids would weave between the adults' legs when the living rooms were too full, the way someone was always cooking or cleaning, the way laughter spilled over from one home into the next. Those first seasons felt like opening a window into a different way of loving, a way that, for a time, actually seemed to work. The camera would catch them in moments that didn't feel staged, when someone was laughing so hard they wiped tears from their eyes, when a group hug formed out of nowhere, when a child would fall asleep on the couch mid-conversation. They weren't just a family on television, they were a family that genuinely seemed to like being together, and that's what made it so powerful to watch. Looking back now, knowing what would come later, there's a bittersweet edge to remembering these times, but that's what makes them unforgettable. These were the days when everyone still believed in the dream. There was a quiet pride in the way they talked about their life, like they knew it was unconventional, but they also knew it was full of love, and in those early days the love outweighed everything else. Cody would stand there with his confident grin, talking about how plural marriage made him a better man, how having multiple wives kept him on his toes, kept him accountable, and you could see the wives nodding, maybe not in perfect agreement on every word, but in solidarity with the belief that what they had was worth defending. The children didn't care about the debates in the outside world, they cared about the little moments, the hugs before bed, the way their birthdays turned into big family events with every sibling and parent gathered around, the camping trips where they roasted marshmallows and stayed up too late telling stories by the fire. Even the simplest days carried a certain magic, mornings where the sun poured through the kitchen window and someone was making pancakes for what felt like an army, afternoons where the kids sprawled out on the floor with board games, evenings where the sound of dinner being served was the same in every household. There was comfort in the routine, in knowing that even though there were multiple homes, they were part of one family. Back then Christine's eyes lit up whenever she talked about raising her kids in this environment. Mary's voice carried the weight of years of trust, Janelle's calm made it all feel stable, and Robin's arrival was filled with hope for a new chapter. The scenes from those first episodes showed them helping each other move furniture, sharing recipes, laughing at each other's quirks, teasing Cody when he tried to juggle too much at once. The air was filled with the energy of beginnings, of something new that still held onto the comfort of the old. There were moments when Cody would be driving, the camera catching him talking about how lucky he felt, how blessed he was to have so many people love him and to love so many in return, and it felt sincere, it felt like he believed it with every part of him. The wives would talk about the challenges, sure, but they did it with a kind of optimism, a confidence that no challenge was bigger than their bond. They would sit in circles in each other's living rooms, kids in their laps, coffee cups in their hands, sharing plans for the future, talking about vacations, house projects, and dreams of all living closer together. In those moments it was easy to imagine the dream working exactly as Cody described, a united family moving through life together. You could see it in the way the kids dashed between households without hesitation, in the way the women's voices softened when they spoke about each other's children, in the way holidays felt like a celebration of abundance, not just of gifts, but of love. It was that abundance that made those early years feel so warm, a richness not measured in money or things, but in the sheer number of people who cared about one another. Even now, looking back, it's impossible not to feel a pang of longing for those days when the love seemed bigger than the obstacles, when they all still believed the dream was possible, and when the word family meant everyone, together. No matter what, in those days you could see how much effort everyone put into making it work, not just because they were on television, but because they truly wanted the family to feel whole, and there was a certain beauty in that kind of dedication. A quiet determination that each of them carried in their own way. Cody's energy seemed endless as he moved from one house to the next, checking in, sharing news, joking with the kids, always trying to make sure no one felt left out, and even though he couldn't be everywhere at once, back then it felt like he tried. Mary carried the history of their beginnings, the years before the show, the private memories that the cameras would never capture, and she wore that history like an anchor, keeping the family grounded. Janelle, with her steady presence, was the one who kept the practical side of things running smoothly, balancing schedules, solving problems quietly in the background. Christine brought the warmth, the open laughter, the light-hearted moments that made the chaos feel like fun instead of stress. And Robin, as the newest addition, represented possibility, the idea that love could still grow and that their circle could expand without breaking. The children were the heartbeat of it all, running through hallways, playing in the yard, sprawled out across couches and carpets with toys and homework and laughter, filling the spaces with a kind of joy that didn't need to be explained. Family. Gatherings were noisy, overlapping conversations, the clatter of dishes, the smell of food drifting from the kitchen, and there was a sense that everyone belonged exactly where they were. Even when the cameras caught little disagreements, they were resolved with a kind of ease that made you believe in their bond, the kind of small compromises that families make every day to keep the peace. Vacations were an adventure, caravans of cars packed with kids and snacks and pillows, everyone singing along to music or telling stories as the miles rolled by. Nights around the campfire felt timeless, with Cody talking about his vision for the family, the wives sharing their hopes for the kids, and the children curled up in blankets, drifting off under the stars. There were traditions forming in those early years, little rituals that would become part of their shared history, like certain meals they'd always cook on birthdays or games they'd play on holidays. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs, and that's what made it so compelling to watch. They weren't trying to pretend they didn't have problems, but back then the problems felt small compared to the love they shared. There was a softness in their voices when they spoke about each other, an unspoken agreement that no matter what, they were in this together. Watching those moments now, knowing how the story changes, you can't help but feel a mix of admiration for what they built and sadness for what they lost. Those were the days when a shared dream held them all in place, when every member of the family still believed they were stronger together, and when the simple act of being together was enough to make it all worth it. Looking back at those early moments, it's easy to forget how much risk they took just to be open about their lives, the courage it must have taken to invite cameras into their homes knowing the world might not understand, yet in those first seasons that risk seemed worth it because it gave them the chance to show a different side of love, one built on community and shared responsibility, and even if you didn't agree with their choices you could see the sincerity in their effort. The way Cody's face lit up when he was surrounded by all the kids, the way Mary's eyes softened when she spoke about the family's beginnings, the way Janelle smiled when she saw everyone working together, the way Christine's laughter filled the air, and the way Robin looked grateful to be welcomed into something so big and unfamiliar, it all added up to a picture of unity. The kids didn't think about controversy or judgment, they thought about who they'd sit next to at dinner, who would help them with their homework, and when the next game night would be. You could see bonds forming between siblings who didn't share the same mother but shared the same sense of belonging, running into each other's houses like it was the most natural thing in the world. Even the small details stuck with you, like the way Christine would kneel down to talk to a child eye to eye, or the way Janelle would quietly fix something without making a fuss, or the way Mary would make sure birthdays felt special no matter how many people there were to celebrate. There was a rhythm to the chaos, a balance in the way they lived, and when they talked about their future it wasn't just about dreams, it was about building something lasting for their children and grandchildren. They spoke of land and big houses where they could all live side by side, of traditions that would carry on for generations, of raising children who knew they were loved deeply by many. In those moments you could see why they believed so strongly in what they were doing, because in their own way they had made it work, at least for a time. There were evenings when they all came together and it felt like the world outside didn't exist, just them in their own bubble, laughing, talking, eating, and being exactly who they were without apology. Watching those episodes now feels like watching home movies from a time when everyone was still innocent to the storms ahead, a time when the smiles were easier, the hugs were tighter, and the future felt wide open. It's that innocence that makes the memories so powerful, because you know how much was at stake and how hard they tried to hold on to it. These were the days when they still believed nothing could shake the foundation they had built, and for a while, that belief was enough to keep them together. In those first years there was still a lightness to the way they moved through life. Even with the demands of such a large family there was laughter in the hallways, shared meals that stretched into the evening, and an unspoken understanding that each person had a role in keeping the family strong. Cody would talk about how lucky he was, not just to have multiple wives, but to have partners who each brought something unique to the table, and when you watched him back then it was clear he believed in the idea of a united front. Mary was the historian of the group, holding on to the memories from before the cameras, reminding everyone of how far they had come, and she carried those stories like a treasure. Janelle was the quiet strength, the one who kept things practical and steady, making sure the day-to-day didn't fall apart. Christine was the heart, always ready with a smile or a joke, turning even stressful moments into something lighter, while Robin, still new, was learning the rhythms of a life that was bigger and louder than anything she'd known before. The Children grew up surrounded by voices and laughter, the noise of life filling every room, and even the simplest moments felt like part of something bigger. They had traditions that gave their world shape, from Friday night family dinners to holiday gatherings where every home was decorated, every child had a stocking, and there was always too much food on the table. Birthdays were a production, not because of expensive gifts, but because they were celebrated by an entire community of parents and siblings, each one making the child feel like the most important person in the world. Vacations became memories they still talk about, long drives filled with chatter, kids trading seats and snacks, adults making plans for where they'd stop next, and nights spent in campgrounds or rented houses that overflowed with people and noise. Even the disagreements back then felt smaller, easier to resolve, because there was still trust that they were all working toward the same goal. The cameras captured moments of tenderness that said more than words could, a hand on a shoulder, a shared smile across a crowded room, the way one wife would step in to help another without being asked. Watching it unfold in those early episodes felt like watching a dream in motion, a vision of family that wasn't about perfection but about connection. They didn't shy away from showing that it was hard, but the hard parts didn't outweigh the love. And that's why those years remain so deeply etched in memory, because they showed a version of this family that was full of hope, when they still believed in the strength of what they were building, and when the love they shared was enough to make you believe it too. Back then there was a sense that no matter how unusual their lives might seem to the outside world, inside those walls they had something rare, something worth protecting, and that feeling came through in the smallest moments. You could see it when Cody walked into a room and kids ran up to him without hesitation, when Mary and Christine exchanged knowing looks over something the kids had done, when Janelle quietly stepped in to help keep the day on track, when Robin smiled softly as she watched the family interact like she was still taking in the sheer size of it all. The rhythm of their days was busy but full, mornings with breakfast being made in more than one kitchen, kids packing bags for school, someone always looking for a missing shoe or homework folder, afternoons when the sound of laughter and footsteps traveled from one home to the next, evenings when the smells of dinner filled the air and conversations overlapped as the family gathered. There was a comfort in that noise, the kind of noise that comes from love and familiarity, from knowing you are part of something bigger than yourself. Holidays were an explosion of that feeling, decorations spilling into every corner, kids buzzing with excitement, parents working together to make sure traditions were kept alive. They celebrated milestones with a warmth that only comes from having a big family, whether it was a graduation, a birthday, or even something as small as a child losing their first tooth. Those moments mattered because they were shared, because everyone was invested in each other's happiness. The early years also carried a certain innocence, a belief that love could stretch to fit everyone, that jealousy and tension could be smoothed over with time and understanding. And for a while, it worked. They laughed together, they made plans together, they raised their children side by side, and even when things were difficult, there was still a deep well of trust holding them in place. Watching it now feels like looking at an old family photo where everyone is smiling, not knowing what the years ahead will bring, and there's a bittersweet beauty in that. It was a time when dreams still felt reachable, when the vision of one big united family wasn't just words, but something they were actively building every single day. And for those who watched from the very beginning, those memories are hard to forget, because they were real, they were full of life, and they made you believe in the possibility of a love that could hold so many people together. There was a magic in those beginnings that can't quite be recreated, the kind of magic that comes from a shared vision still untested by time, when every plan feels possible and every challenge seems surmountable simply because you haven't yet seen the weight of what's coming. Cody moved through those days with the energy of someone chasing a dream, convinced that his version of love could stand as an example for the world, and in those moments the wives were with him, each in their own way adding their strength to the foundation. Mary brought history and loyalty, the proof that this family was built on more than just an idea. Janelle brought structure and calm, the quiet hand that kept things moving forward. Christine brought warmth and joy, turning ordinary days into something special with her humor and lightheartedness. And Robin, stepping into a life so much bigger than anything she had known before, brought a sense of new possibility. The children, more than anyone, embodied the heart of the family. They darted between homes without hesitation, made friends out of siblings they didn't share a mother with, and created a web of connections so tight it seemed unbreakable. The camera captured moments that even now feel timeless, a group of kids piled together under a blanket watching a movie, Cody carrying a sleeping toddler to bed, the wives working together to prepare a meal for everyone, laughter spilling out of kitchens and living rooms. There were camping trips where the kids' faces glowed in the light of the fire, long drives where the cars were filled with the sound of music and chatter, late nights where plans for the future were discussed over mugs of coffee. They weren't just building a family, they were building a world where love was multiplied, not divided, and for a while it seemed to work. Even the disagreements carried a softness, because they were approached with the belief that everyone ultimately wanted the same thing, to keep the family strong. Looking back now, it's easy to feel the weight of what was lost, but in those moments the future felt bright, and the present was enough. They were a family that celebrated together, worked together, raised their children together, and believed together, and that belief was the heartbeat of it all. Watching those early days is like stepping into a memory where the air feels warmer, the laughter comes easier, and love still feels like something that can conquer anything. In those early years there was a feeling that they were building something unshakable, that no matter how unconventional their path might seem, the love and commitment they shared would be enough to see them through. Cody would speak about the future with a certainty that was contagious, painting pictures of one big house where every child could run freely from room to room, where the kitchen was always busy, where laughter never stopped echoing through the halls. The wives listened, each one imagining her own version of that dream, and for a while it felt within reach. Mary could already see the traditions continuing for decades, holidays where grown children returned with families of their own. Janelle imagined a life where the practicalities were ironed out and everyone lived within steps of each other. Christine dreamed of her children being surrounded by an unending network of love and support, and Robin, still finding her place, seemed to want nothing more than to be fully accepted into that vision. The children were the living proof that this family could thrive, running in packs, sharing toys in bedrooms, learning to navigate relationships that were unlike anything their peers experienced. They played in backyards, built forts, chased each other through the snow, and filled the air with the kind of laughter that made you forget about everything else. Birthdays were marked not just by gifts but by the effort of an entire family, making sure each child felt special, from handmade cards to favorite meals to surprise decorations. The camera caught moments of tenderness that revealed the depth of their bonds, a mother comforting a child who wasn't biologically hers, siblings defending each other, Cody kneeling to speak to a little one at eye level, his expression soft and focused. There were challenges, of course, tensions over schedules, decisions about money, moments of jealousy, but back then those hurdles felt like bumps in the road, not walls too high to climb. Even disagreements had a sense of resolution, a willingness to sit together and talk things through until a path forward was found. The outside world might not have understood their choices, but inside those homes there was a sense of unity, a belief that what they were doing mattered, and that belief was strong enough to bind them together. Looking back now it feels almost like a dream, a time when everything was simpler, not because there were fewer problems, but because the love they shared felt bigger than the problems. It was a time when hope was still the driving force, and when the future seemed like a place they would all reach together, hand in hand, no matter what. Those first seasons felt like an open door into a life that was both extraordinary and deeply human, a glimpse at a family trying to balance love, faith, and the everyday chaos of raising children. There was something grounding about watching them juggle schedules, cook for 20 people, and still find time to laugh together. Cody thrived in the role of the connector, the one moving between homes with news, jokes, and plans, always talking about the bigger picture. Mary carried the deep roots of their shared past, reminding everyone of where they came from and why they started this journey in the first place. Janelle's steady approach kept things practical and made the impossible seem manageable, while Christine's joy made the hard days easier to bear, her laughter filling whatever room she was in. Robin, in her early days, was still weaving herself into the fabric of the family, learning its rhythms, bringing her own hopes for what it could be. The children grew up with a sense of belonging that was rare, surrounded by multiple parents and a crowd of siblings who doubled as best friends. They learned how to share not just toys but space, time, and love, moving easily between homes as if the walls separating them were invisible. Family nights were full of life board games scattered across tables, movies projected onto living room walls, plates piled high with homemade food. Holidays were even bigger, stretching across multiple houses, each one decorated and overflowing with presents and traditions. There was a joy in seeing how each wife celebrated differently, yet the children got the best of all worlds, experiencing a variety of traditions that still tied back to one shared family identity. The cameras caught moments that felt so genuine they stayed with you. Christine wiping away tears of laughter during a silly game, Janelle helping one of the older kids with homework late at night, Mary and Cody sharing a quiet joke in the corner. Robin smiling as one of the children she didn't give birth to hugged her tightly. They were building not just memories, but a legacy, one rooted in the belief that love could be multiplied without being diminished. And for a time, it worked. Watching those moments now, you can't help but feel the nostalgia for when hope was still the center of their story, when their unity seemed unshakable, and when the simple act of sitting down together for a meal felt like proof that their dream was alive and well. In those days, the future stretched out in front of them like an open road, and every conversation about it was filled with possibility. They spoke of building homes side by side on one piece of land, of having a shared space where everyone could gather under one roof, of creating an environment where the children could grow up without ever feeling the divisions that others might expect in such a family. Cody's eyes lit up when he described it, his words spilling out with excitement as he painted a picture of a united household buzzing with life. The wives listened, sometimes teasing him for dreaming so big, but you could see in their expressions that they wanted it too. Mary imagined the holidays they would spend together, Janelle thought of the practical benefits, Christine envisioned the warmth and noise of everyone together, and Robin saw a future where she was fully integrated, her children embraced as part of the whole. The kids heard these plans and smiled, imagining bedrooms close to their siblings, long summer days running from one part of the house to another without barriers. Back then it all seemed achievable because the belief in each other was still strong. There were evenings when they sat together, sipping coffee or tea, the kids playing nearby, and they'd talk about how lucky they were to have this life despite the challenges. They laughed about the little mishaps, burned dinners, missing shoes, last-minute schedule changes, because those moments didn't overshadow the joy. The cameras caught glimpses of tenderness that spoke volumes, a wife stepping in to help another without hesitation, Cody leaning down to listen closely to a child's story, the older kids guiding the younger ones with patience. These weren't grand gestures, but small acts repeated daily, the kind of actions that build trust and connection over time. Watching now, with the knowledge of what came later, it's almost like looking at a photograph where the colors are brighter, the smiles a little wider, and the air a little lighter. The love was real, the commitment was real, and in those moments it seemed unshakable. Even when disagreements arose, they were approached with the belief that they were all on the same team. The dream wasn't just Cody's, it belonged to all of them, woven into their daily lives, into the way they raised their children, into the way they celebrated even the smallest victories together. Those early days hold a kind of magic that no amount of time or change can erase, because they were built on hope, and for a while, hope was enough to hold them all together. In those first seasons there was a rhythm that made everything feel alive, the way Cody would stride into a house greeted by the sound of children's voices, the way the wives would gather in kitchens swapping stories and advice over the smell of something cooking, the way laughter traveled easily from one room to the next. There was an ease in how they navigated each other's spaces, children darting past, with barely a glance at which house they were in, because every door felt open. And every home felt like theirs. Holidays were a whirlwind of movement and joy, with Christmas lights strung across more than one home and gifts piled high for what felt like dozens of little hands waiting to tear them open. Birthdays were just as big, not because of extravagance, but because every member of the family pitched in to make them special. A cake from one kitchen, decorations from another, siblings helping to wrap presents in secret corners of the house. Even the quiet moments had weight, the sight of a child curled up in a parent's lap listening to a bedtime story, the sound of Cody's voice softening when he talked to his kids, the way one wife would comfort another's child as naturally as her own. Back then the disagreements never seemed to stick for long because there was still an underlying current of trust. They believed in what they were doing, they believed in each other. The big dream of living side by side on one property felt close enough to touch. And it fueled so many conversations. It wasn't just about logistics, it was about a vision of a future where family was the center of everything, where no one had to go far to be surrounded by love. The kids would run through open spaces in their minds, imagining playgrounds and treehouses and rooms filled with cousins and siblings. The wives imagined shared gardens, big kitchens, and holidays where everyone could gather in one place without having to travel between homes, and Cody saw himself in the middle of it all, holding the family together, the man who had made this dream possible. For a time, the dream felt unshakable, and that's why those memories carry such a bittersweet weight now, because in those moments before the cracks began to show, before the trust began to falter, they had something rare, something that even in the most chaotic days felt solid. They had the kind of love that made ordinary days feel like treasures, and when you watch those early episodes now, you can still see it in their eyes, the belief that no matter what challenges came their way, they would face them together. That belief was the heartbeat of the family, and for a while it was enough. There was something in the air back then that you can almost still feel if you close your eyes, the warmth of connection, the steady hum of a family that chose to live by its own rules, the sound of children's laughter blending with the clink of dishes in kitchens across multiple homes. Each day was a patchwork of moments stitched together with care, Christine's playful teasing that could turn any stressful situation into something lighthearted, Janelle's calm wisdom that smoothed over disagreements before they had the chance to grow, Mary's sharp Sense of humor that cut through tension with a perfectly timed comment, Robin's quiet gratitude for being part of something so vast, and Cody's boundless energy as he moved between households trying to be present for everyone. It wasn't perfect. No family ever is, but it was alive and full of meaning. The cameras didn't just catch the big milestones, they caught the in-between moments that made this family real. A wife braiding a child's hair before school, an older sibling helping a younger one with homework, Cody pausing mid-sentence to scoop up a toddler who had wandered into the room. Even the chaos had beauty in it, piles of shoes by the door, mismatched cups on the counter, half-finished art projects scattered across tables. Because life in a family this size was never tidy, but it was never empty either, and through it all there was this shared dream of the future, this vision that one day they'd look around and see everything they had worked for standing right there in front of them, the kind of dream that kept them going on long days and late nights when schedules clashed and tempers flared, because they still believed that the love they shared could stretch to fit everyone. They believed that family meant showing up over and over again even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. That belief made the joy shine brighter, and it made the challenges seem smaller. Watching those early days, now knowing what time would eventually take from them, makes every laugh, every shared glance, every small gesture feel like a piece of gold you wish you could hold on to forever. And maybe that's why so many people still remember those episodes with such affection, because they captured something fleeting. A chapter of life when hope and love were still bigger than fear and doubt, when everyone in that family still believed in the same story and was willing to fight for. And then time moved on, and the chapters that followed would test everything they had built, but those first years remain untouched in memory, like photographs you keep in a box, knowing you will take them out again and again just to remember how it felt back then, before the cracks showed, before the voices grew sharper, before the spaces between them widened. There was this family united by something they truly believed could last forever. It is impossible to watch those early days without feeling that tug in your chest, the ache of knowing that the laughter you hear belongs to a version of them that can never exist again. You remember the way the children moved so freely between homes, the way every wife took pride in seeing the other's children succeed, the way Cody's voice carried an excitement that was real, the way gatherings were loud, messy, and full of life. These weren't just television moments, they were pieces of a living, breathing dream, one that millions of people watched unfold and quietly rooted for, even if they didn't fully understand it, because there was something universally human about it, the desire to belong, the hope that love can grow instead of shrink, the belief that together is always better than apart. And for a while they had it, they really did. The smiles weren't fake, the hugs weren't staged, the bond was real, and it lived in the countless little acts of care and connection that happened when the cameras weren't looking. You can see it in the way Christine's laughter would make everyone else laugh, in the way Janelle's steady hand kept things moving forward, in the way Mary's shared history reminded them of why they started, and in the way Robin's early steps into the family were met with an open door. You can see it in the children's faces, in the games they played, the secrets they shared, the way they grew up knowing that love didn't have to be limited to one parent, one house, one idea of family. Those moments matter because they were proof that even in an imperfect world, imperfect people can create something extraordinary, if only for a time. And maybe that's why the nostalgia runs so deep, because it isn't just about the family they were, it's about the hope they carried, the belief that love could hold against the odds, and the way they showed the world that for a while it could. And so the early years of this family live on, not just in old episodes or in the memories of those who were there, but in the hearts of everyone who watched and felt something real. They were a reminder that family is more than blood. It is the daily choice to show up, to forgive, to laugh, to dream together even when the future is uncertain. That choice is what made their beginning so powerful, and it's what makes the memory of it impossible to forget.